This will be part one of the detailed timeline of events. This took place January 18th, 2024. The parties involved for this day are Kalea Redding and myself. And this event description is the development of the unique pageant greetings for the Classic Touch category. So, as a member of the Sound Machine, I decided that I wanted to participate in the KKSI pageant because I like to compete and I thought it would be cool and interesting to get myself involved in other band stuff. So, in the pageant, there are 4 categories. There's Classic Touch, which is when we do our greeting to greet the crowd and let them know who we are, where we're from, what we're about, and just to add a little pizzazz at the end to make our greetings unique and appealing. There is the swimsuit portion, which is when we showcase our swimsuits. Normally, somebody has a prop involved. All of us had props. All the contestants for this pageant had props. And then there's the talent portion, which is where we showcase our talents. And then the formal attire question and answer portion, which is when the judges ask us questions and we answer them to the best of our abilities. So, January 18th, at pageant practice, we started practicing. Our first practice was in the beginning of January, but this is like roughly 2 weeks later. So at this time, it was required of us to have finalized our greetings for the Classic Touch portion. However, during practice, nobody had their finalized greeting prepared except for me. So when I go up to say my greeting, I say, "Hello, everybody. I'm Zara Shabazz, blah, 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 blah. I am your one and only contestant number," whatever contestant number I was at the time, because there were way more girls. So I became contestant number 3 later on down the line. So Kalea Redding decides to pull me to the side. And at this time, we were cool. We didn't have any problems, nothing of the sort. We actually shared jokes, but she pulled me to the side and she was like, "Hey, so can you please not say your one and only, because I feel like it would make more sense for me to say since I'm contestant number 1. So me being nice, I was like, "Yeah, sure, it makes perfect sense. I'll definitely revise my greeting since it makes more sense because you're the first contestant." So had no issues after that. I let her say your one and only, and I removed that from my greeting at this time. And then I proceeded to add 3 adjectives at the end of my greeting to further differentiate my greeting from everyone else's to maintain its uniqueness, because the coordinator, Jasmine Smith, said that none of us could have the same greeting, none of us could do the same thing, and she emphasized that we had to maintain a uniqueness about it. So nobody else was doing that at the time. No one else had 3 adjectives except for Zara Shabazz. So I decided to do that. So now let's move forward. Roughly a month later, March 17th, 2024, the parties involved with this interaction are Miss Jasmine Smith, who is the pageant coordinator, Takara Carmack, who is my sister, and myself. So at this time, it was required of us to have our props finalized for the swimsuit portion. Like how I mentioned previously, normally in the swimsuit portion, you're supposed to have a prop. So I decided to choose Remember the Time by Michael Jackson because I really enjoyed its Egyptian themed, and I like to do my eyeliner real sharp, so I feel like it just went really well with my whole vibe. So my initial prop idea was to build a pyramid on my back. However, at this point, I hadn't created my prop. I hadn't finalized my prop, because every time I would try to actually put the prop on my back, it would always have a malfunction. So I was just like, okay, I don't know if I want to do that. So during pageant practice, everybody's going up to do the swimsuit portion, and there was a general unpreparedness of this portion at the time. Nobody had the prop that they would be using in the actual pageant during pageant practice at this time. Nobody, including myself. So for some reason, Miss Jasmine decides to single me out in an attempt to embarrass me or whatever. She was like, "Azaria, I just feel like it's very unfair to the other contestants that they're prepared and you're not for this portion. I don't know why you have this sense of entitlement, but you should have been prepared." So, after hearing that, I'm confused and my feelings are a little bit hurt, because I'm just like, what is she talking about? Nobody's prepared for this portion. Nobody brought the prop that they will be using in the actual official pageant. So what is she talking about? So, at the end of pageant practice, Ms. Jasmine would always ask us if we had any questions, comments, or concerns. And so, me feeling like if I have something to say, I'll say it to the person that I have something to say it to. I decided to say, yes, I have something to say. I said, Miss Jasmine, I feel like it's very unfair of you to try to single me out, and say I'm unprepared for this portion during practice today when nobody has their actual prop that they'll be using for the pageant. And, she gave her apology. She said, well, I'm sorry you feel like I was trying to single you out, but I was just trying to make an example out of the fact that you don't have your pageant prop prepared. So later that night, without my knowledge, Miss Jasmine decided to contact my sister, Takara Carmack. And the reason why she may have felt comfortable doing so is because my sister is a part of Tau Beta Sigma, also known as TBS, which is the band sorority, and so is Miss Jasmine. However, my sister Takara crossed the sorority line well before Miss Jasmine did, making my sister Miss Jasmine's big sister in the sorority. However, they had little to no interaction prior to Miss Jasmine contacting my sister. So Miss Jasmine calls my sister to basically complain about my perceived attitude, saying that I acted entitled as if I had the competition secured, and that she doesn't know why I had such a horrible attitude when she tried to correct me. But, that entire interaction just added a layer of personal dynamics to the entire professional critique. So that interaction potentially escalated that entire situation due to their sorority and personal connections, deepening the misunderstanding. So Miss Jasmine involved my sister by contacting her in an attempt to have my sister ridicule me for, making it clear that nobody was prepared for practice, despite her trying to single me out. So now I believe we are 2 weeks later. It's March 26th. The parties involved with this are Kalea Redding, myself, and the coordinator, Miss Jasmine Smith. And this pertains to the greeting yet again. So at this time, we have done our greetings. Like from January 18th, 2024, up until March 26th, 2024, nobody else was saying the exact same greeting that I was. No one else was using 3 adjectives at the end of their greeting from January 18th to March 26th. So, during the Classic Touch portion, which I mentioned previously, what was required of us to have a greeting prepared, I noticed that when Kalea goes up to do her greeting, she adds 3 adjectives at the end of her greeting. So, me confused by this, I go to Miss Jasmine and I say, hey, Miss Jasmine, I noticed that Kalea has added 3 adjectives at the end of her greeting, and I also understand that you have emphasized to us multiple times that we need to maintain a uniqueness about our greeting. So is it okay for her to do that? Miss Jasmine then looks at me and says, if you have a problem with Kalea, you need to go speak to her yourself. So I was like, okay. In preparation of me preparing to speak to Kalea myself, Miss Jasmine circumvented me, pulled Kalea to the side, and told her, Azaria said you're copying her. Azaria said you want to be like her. When I never ever once said that. And the only reason why I know Miss Jasmine spoke to her before I had the chance to is because when I did speak to Kalea that day, and I did speak to her, after Miss Jasmine just told me to talk to her myself, when I immediately pulled her to the side and said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? She said, Jasmine already talked to me. I'm not trying to copy you. I'm not trying to be like you. And I was like, I never said that. I just noticed that you added 3 adjectives. And, remember how in the beginning of pageant practice, you asked me not to say your one and only. I was hoping that you could, make the same concessions for me that I made for you. And Kalea was like, well, again, I'm not trying to be like you. I'm not trying to copy you. And I was like, again, I never said that. So then she walks away. Then she comes back to me. And she's like, but aren't you saying the? Aren't you saying the in your greeting? And I was like, Kalea, everyone's saying the. It's a part of the example. So I'm confused as to what your problem is. She was like, well, I have no issue. I just don't want to be like you. And I told her I never said that she did. And she said, well, I'm not going to say 3 adjectives. And we left it at that. She wasn't going to say 3 adjectives. And I was going to maintain my pageant greeting that I've revised for her with my 3 adjectives. So this is 2 days later, March 28th. The parties involved are Kalea Redding, the Jovan Wilson, the band director, Miss Jasmine Smith, and the former KK Side Queens. Specifically, Anna Day and Nadia Atmore. So, during pageant practice, everybody was running through each category of the pageant. Yet again, you know how it was regular scheduled programming for pageant practice. However, when it came to do the greeting portion for a second time, Kalea walked up and did her greeting, and then, she put 3 adjectives back at the end of her greeting after 2 days before we had just agreed that she wouldn't do so. So, me being who I am, in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know what? She's an adult. She can say whatever she wants to say. These are words that we don't own, and it's just a greeting. Whatever. So, I go up to do my greeting, and I say, hi, my name is Azaria Shabazz. I'm from so-and-so and so. I am your very own one and only sensational, tenacious, and genius contestant number 3. And all was well. So, at the end of pageant practice, per usual, Miss Jasmine asked us, did we have any questions, comments, or concerns? And everyone just stood there smiling in Model T, and no one said anything. Then, one of the contestants stepped out of the line, and she's like, you better take this opportunity to say whatever y'all got to say or forever hold your peace. So, then, Kalea takes this opportunity to step out of line, turn to me and say, Azaria, I feel like you're very weird for putting 3 adjectives at the end of your greeting. If you had a problem with me, you should have came to me directly instead of going to Miss Jasmine. So I said, Kalea, it's just a greeting, and I did address it with you, and I already told you what Miss Jasmine told you wasn't the facts, so whatever. That's a you problem if you have a problem. So then, Kalea proceeds to speak in her Caribbean accent, clap her hands, and aggress toward me. And the previous queens are quiet, and Miss Jasmine is quiet. Nobody addressed the fact that she was behaving in that way. However, me, feeling threatened, I kicked my heels off, and I said, Kalea, if you want to trip over some words, we can figure it out. So, at that point, the previous queen started yelling at me, and Anna decided to be like, are you serious? What the hell is wrong with you? You really finna tweak out of her on some fucking words? Are you so dead ass? And, at this time, I'm thinking like, so nobody had anything to say to this girl when she switched to her Caribbean accent, started clapping her hands and aggressing towards me. But the moment that I am preparing to defend myself, now everybody wants to come at me. So, me feeling upset about the matter and, figuring out how I can de-escalate the situation, I decide to cool off and go outside, to which I am followed outside by Miss Jasmine Smith and Mr. Wilson. So I'm outside, and I'm in the process of calling my mother, and Mr. Wilson is like, don't call your mom, don't call your mom. So I ignore him, and I proceed to call my mother because I need to talk to someone. Like, I just experienced a very intense encounter before. I need to speak to somebody. So, I'm on the phone with my mom, and as I'm on my phone with my mother, I see not 1, but 2 carloads of young ladies a part of Tau Beta Sigma and Tau Beta Sigma paraphernalia with TBS on their shirts pull up to the band room. At this point, I think the probate just happened, and everybody just crossed whatever fraternity or sorority that they're now a part of at this time. Kalea had crossed Tau Beta Sigma, and, her line sisters were the sisters that pulled up on me at the band room. So, I'm watching them pull up, and it just slips my mind that they came to the band room for me. But I didn't have any proof, so I let that thought go. So then Miss Jasmine starts talking to me. She's like, I'm really sorry about all that. I didn't realize how much the greeting meant to her. And I said, yeah, I accept your apology, but you put words in my mouth. That's why we're having problems right now, because you said something that I never said to her. And then she just gave me a hug and didn't have anything to say after I said that. So then Miss Jasmine tells me to come back into the band room so we can rehearse practice one last time before we're dismissed. And so we do. And then she's like, all right, now y'all go home. So then I get into my dorm room, and I see 3 missed calls from Courtney Blake, who is the dance coordinator. And I have been put in 3 group chats by Eclipse and Tau Beta Sigma members who were not present for that interaction